Matt Miguez has plenty on his mind, and he's ready to share it with the world. It's time to hear the Miguez Mindset.
Welcome back to another edition of the Miguez Mindset here on ESPN 103.7 Lafayette and 104.1 Lake Charles. Matt Miguez here. Again, last week talked about the defending national champion LSU Tigers. This week, we're going to shift a little closer to home with the Louisiana Raging Cajuns. Matt Deggs continuing to build off of the success of last year from the year before, kind of stacking regional appearances on top of each other here with the Louisiana Raging Cajuns. Kendall Rogers, the managing editor of D1 Baseball, joins me once again for the second week in a row to preview the Cajuns. Kendall, once again, man, appreciate you taking the time. How are you?
Dude, I'm doing awesome, man. I tell you what, it's college baseball time, and there's no better people like to talk to you about some college baseball than people in South Louisiana. So looking forward to it.
Yeah, we especially here in Lafayette, the Cajun baseball program is one of the better ones you'll find in mid-major baseball. I mean, the fans are
Yes.
wild, the tradition is there. Really looking forward to another strong season. And I want to start with last year. Obviously Matt
hmm
Deggs took over this program under some brutal circumstances. And the first year or so, you mix the death of Tony Robichaux with COVID, just kind of navigating the waters of that. And then, in 2022, you win the Sun Belt, go to a regional. Last year,
Yeah.
you go to a regional again, steadily improving, getting this program back to where it once was. Assess the job that Matt Deggs has done here in Lafayette.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you look at the job that he's done, it's been pretty good. Obviously, if you're the Cajuns, I mean, you're a program that I feel like, in terms of resources and fan support, that I feel like should be in the mix for super regional appearances very consistently. And he's getting them back to that point. I mean, to make the regional in College Station 2 years ago, actually play really well there. I still think back to just the big plays that guys like Will Veillon and whatnot made in College Station. They didn't lose that regional. They played really well and just got beat. And so I thought that was a step forward. And then you look at last year, winning 41 games, winning 18 in a very, very rugged Sun Belt. That was pretty impressive. And so now this is a program that, with two straight good seasons, excellent fan support, great facilities, all the boxes are checked. Now it's kind of time to take that next step forward. And I do think this team overall has the ability to do that. Obviously, a lot of new faces for the Cajuns this
Yeah.
year, particularly in some important roles, like the number one starting spot. But overall, I really like the nucleus of this team. I think Kyle DeBarge is, as strange as it sounds, I've always really liked him. And I think from a national perspective, people aren't as seasoned on him as maybe I am and maybe you guys are there in Lafayette. And I think he's going to have a monster year. And then you look at the return of a guy like Carson Fluno, who I really liked last fall when I saw the Cajuns. I think this team has a chance to be really good.
Yeah, you talked about Kyle DeBarge. One thing that people will notice about the Cajuns baseball program, especially over the last 10 years, that they find a way to produce monster shortstops. I mean,
Yeah,
Blake Trahan, Hayden Cantrell, now Kyle DeBarge. And a lot of those guys have started since their
shortstop you,
freshman
man.
year. What's that?
Well, you could say like shortstop you too, because I mean,
Yeah.
well, here's, I mean, thinking out loud, not to insert LSU into the Louisiana equation here, but like, think of the number of really good shortstops at LSU and Louisiana over the last 2 decades.
Yep.
It's crazy. Yeah, I mean, you
Yep.
could argue that no two schools within 40 miles of each other even come close to that.
LSU likes to call themselves DBU. Maybe the state of Louisiana should just be shortstop U.
Yeah, no, exactly.
Um,
And it's not like La Tech and schools like that have chopped liver out there at short.
right. No doubt. When you look at DeBar, 371 last year, 15 doubles, 7 homers, 38 RBIs,
Yeah.
OPS just under one. Talk to me about Kyle's game and what you like the
Yeah.
most about what he does.
Well, I go back to kind of the first time I saw him play. It was at the LSU Cajun scrimmage in Baton Rouge. I want to say, I guess it'd be 3 years ago now. And I'm sitting there watching like Dylan Cruz and like, wow, man, this guy's really good. And DeBarge comes to the plate. I think he hits like a gapper, and then the next half inning, he makes just a terrific play at shortstop. And I remember sitting there behind home plate there at Alex Box and going, man, like who the hell is this guy? Like, I mean, I love this kid, and he has just kind of built from that. And what I saw at that point, and what we've consistently continued to see, is a guy that's just a very fluid defender, accurate arm, good bat, powerful bat. Every box is kind of checked. And so I think he's a premier prospect. I think he's a premier player. There's just not much about his game that you go, yeah, like he needs to get way better at X. Like he's just not one of
Right.
those players. And that's very few far between in college baseball.
You brought up a lot of new faces. You look at the
Mm-hmm.
roster from last year: Heath Hood, Carson Rockefeller, Julian Brock, C.J. Willis, Max Marshak, Will Veon. They're all gone. And you're going to depend on a lot of guys, a lot of younger guys to step up into those roles. Kyle DeBarge and John Taylor are going to have to be the two leaders from a position player standpoint. Ben
Yeah.
Robichaux had a lot of experience last year. Connor Higgs as well. Who else are you kind of impressed with from a newer face standpoint in terms of position players?
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned the guy's gone because I think Jose Torres potentially has some pretty big shoes to fill behind the plate. I mean, outside of really DeBarge and Carson was a really nice player too, but like Julian Brock for me, like I loved watching him in college. Just a powerful bat, really hard nosed guy, very physical behind the plate, and so just replacing him is incredibly difficult. Not to say it can't be done, but it'll be very difficult. So I'm very curious to see how Torres does back there. I know Matt was really excited about Doug Pastore during fall baseball. Obviously, he's making the transition to Division One baseball, so it's a little different. But you're talking about a guy who hit 346 last year with some pretty good overall numbers, has a little bit of speed. I think if you look at a return of a guy like Trey LaFleur, he's a guy that he's had some productive moments, but also has had to deal with some injuries and things like that. And like he has seen a lot of pitching in college baseball. You just kind of wonder if he's one of those guys that people kind of discount because you look at the numbers in the past. But he might be ready to kind of take a big step forward. I know Caleb Stelly was a guy that he was excited about in the fall, and then Zach Storbuck and had a good fall as well. He'll be at first base for those guys, and I know they really like what they see out of him. So I think when you include Higgs and DeBarge and Taylor, I don't think this is an offense that from day one, kind of like LSU a little bit, from day one is not going to just blow you away. But I think they will continue to get better as the season progresses. And what I do really like about this team, to kind of throw some newcomers on the mound as well, is to see what Jack Martinez does on the Friday roll. It is Martinez. I asked
Yes.
Dex. I'm a Texas boy, so I'm going to say Martinez, but it is Martinez. But they loved him in the fall. I mean, he was anywhere from like 92 to 96 with his fastball. Really good secondary stuff. He is transferring from Trinity College in San Antonio, which is non D1. So I mean, there's a transition here, but for a guy like him to go to a 41 win team and be the Friday guy, it gives you an idea of the stuff you're dealing with there. So
Mhm.
I kind of actually circle him as probably the most intriguing newcomer just to be in that role and for Matt to be that high on him. And I think if you look at the rest of the guys, I mean, Chase Morgan's a talented freshman lefty. I know right now they have him slated to be that number 4 starter, but I just have a feeling just from talking to Matt in the fall that just from a sheer talent standpoint, if he gets off to a really good start this year, I think he's going to move up the ladder pretty fast in terms of his role. I think he'll end up being in the weekend. And then you get I'm going to totally mispronounce this. You can tell I'm not a French Canadian or a French Louisiana guy, but it was a Louis Philippe Langvin. I can't remember how he pronounced it. The kid, the number 3 starter. You might have to help me out here.
I'm drawing a blank on you as well, man.
Yeah, it's Luis Felipe Langevin. Yeah, he's a Canadian kid, I believe. But again, he's another non-Division One transfer that had a really good fall, and they've got him slated to be number 3 starter right now. So Again, a lot of new faces. There's no question, but I do think that they can kind of mitigate some of those issues. With getting JT Etheridge and Blake Marshall back, two seniors. That's going to be huge to have two seniors in those roles. So a lot of new faces, but a lot of promises as well is what I would say.
I found where my confusion lies because I figured out that they're going to save commentators a lot of headache. He's listed on the roster as LP.
Well, that'd have been nice for those guys to do that whenever they told me his name.
So
So
Kendall,
somebody down there somebody in Cajun country who's very fluent in French is just laughing at me right now, and I don't blame
yeah, it's okay. They'll let it slide. So Kendall, 41 win team last year, tons of turnover, like we talked
Yeah.
about. What's kind of the expectation? Like, what should fans' expectation be coming into this year?
Yeah, I mean, I think being in the mix of regional hosts is a good place to start. I mean, I'm one of those people who, I mean, we can all sit here and go, "Oh, super regional or bust," but I mean, how many programs in college baseball are truly super regional or bust? That's a very difficult question to answer. So,
Certainly.
I think if you look at this club overall, I think if they can be at least in the discussion for regional hosts, I think you consider that a big step forward. I will say this: I think the Sun Belt is going to be ultra competitive. Coastal Carolina was a club that we had ranked coming in the season. You guys are certainly familiar with them. Just a really kind of hard hitting club. I think if you look at we mentioned Texas State earlier. I think they're going to be pretty good. And so I'm Troy Southern Miss.
Yep.
Troy. Skylar Mead, the former South Carolina pitching coach. He did a phenomenal job, I thought, with Troy last year. One of the hidden gems, by the way, if you look at some of their facilities upgrades that they're doing at Troy right now in baseball,
Really
ultra
impressive.
impressive. It's not quite Russo, but it's pretty impressive. And so Troy's got some helium, and then Southern Miss. They lost some guys, but Carson Pato's back. Nico Mazza's back on the mound. They've got Slade Wilkes back from a power standpoint. So that will be yet another team. And again, we've got Southern Miss and Louisiana back to back in our projected standings for the Sun Belt. And I can't wait for those two teams to play because boy, that's always a battle.
And then again, with the Cajuns, you look at the schedule. Matt Deggs has done a really nice job over the last couple of
Mm-hmm.
years of making a very competitive schedule. They're going to start with Wright State coming to town. McNeese is no slouch over there in Lake
Yeah.
Charles. You go to Houston to play Vanderbilt, LSU, and Houston. You play Tulane at home for 3, and then you start in the Sun Belt with ODU and Texas State and ULM and those programs like that. Again, a very competitive, very challenging schedule. At what point of this season are you expecting the Cajuns to really settle in and be consistent?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think looking at the schedule, I think we're really going to find out what this team's like, what their overall pedigree is. I think after that Texas State series, because if you look at their schedule right now, they start with Wright State, which, by the way, I see my man Matt Deggs is doing his homework on who to schedule. Teams that always win
Yep.
like 40+ games. That was smart scheduling. Good job, Matt. So Wright's always good, and then I think you're going to find out at least kind of your initial expectation with this team at Minute Maid. There that third weekend with Vandy, LSU, and Houston. We've talked about Vandy and LSU, but I mean Houston. I think Todd Whitting's going to have a really solid club this year as well. So I think you're going to find out a lot that weekend. But then I kind of go into conference play here because like drawing conclusions on week 3 is impossible.
Right.
Like it's real honestly just kind of dumb. So I kind of look at those last 2 weekends in March where they have ODU at home. They go to Texas State. I think both of those clubs are going to be pretty good. So I think if you're Matt Deggs and you come out of those 2 weekends, and let's say you have 2 series wins, I mean you're starting to feel very good when you have Marshall and UL Monroe the next 2 weekends,
Yep.
and then you get ready for Coastal and Southern Miss and Troy. So I mean those are going to be. I think those 2 weekends for me against ODU and Texas State will tell me a lot because that'll essentially give Cajuns fans and give Matt and the coaching staff an idea of okay, here's what's got to change here. Going into those weekends is Coastal, Troy, and Southern Miss.
Kendall Rogers, the managing editor of D1Baseball.com, joining us to preview the Louisiana Raging Cajuns. The season starts on February the 16th when they host Wright State at Russo Park. Kendall, really appreciate your time, man. And before you run, tell our folks about D1 baseball and what they can get.
Yeah, man, just d1baseball.com, at d1baseball on X and slash Twitter. We'll have a lot of Sunbelt content this year. Obviously, that league just continues to get better and better. I think the Sunbelt's going to end up being a 4, 5, 6 bid league at some point. Not sure it's going to be this year, but it will get there at some point. So just a baseball crazy league, and I'm here for it. I love the direction the Sunbelt's going.
Yeah, it's been a great league the last couple of years, and you can tell that it's only going to get better. Kendall, once again, man, really appreciate you taking the time. Make sure you subscribe to our social media at ESPN Southwest Louisiana and ESPN_SWLA. And we'll be back soon to talk more college baseball with the Cajuns, Tigers, and the McNeese Cowboys right here on the Miguez Mindset on ESPN 103.7 Lafayette and 104.1 Lake Charles.